Hello, good people. Hello, LinkedIn. I'm so glad that we're coming together again. Happy Wednesday. This is going to be a live that is actually going to be broken up into 3 parts. So we're probably going to have 3 parts of the same conversation because of how important it is. And today we're talking about buyer psychology. For the sake of time, given the fact that I have about 10 minutes of content that I can deliver today because of other obligations, I'm going to jump into this. So buyer psychology is, in a simplest way, understanding the mindset, the behavior, the values, the beliefs, the point of view of your ideal buyer. That's what buyer psychology is. Yes, we can go into more theoretical definitions. We can spend a lot of time on this because there is a lot of research that exists around buyer psychology, consumer behavior. And we'll probably do that in other lives when we have a little bit more time for the content portion of our time together. But given that this is more of like an introduction to this, and I want us to make it as practical as possible, today we're going to focus on buyer's psychology from the context of culture. And this, I think, is really important to me because of, first of all, how much I travel and the different cultures that I get to experience, whether it's professionally or socially. And then every time we're in a different continent or different country, there's obviously a lot that I observe and absorb from that particular country or continent, if you will, in trying to understand the micro influences that cause people to make decisions, as well as the macro. And culture is a very interesting thing for me because I've been to so many different parts of the world and experienced so many different cultures. It's really easy for me to see the subtlety in what makes the same product or service work in a particular market versus what makes it fail when the same product is applied to a different market. And so for you as a business owner, the idea of being a global community and even creating content for the world, for the internet, it does matter that you start to understand that culture plays a very big role when you are attempting to sell something. And it doesn't even necessarily mean that you're selling your service, because maybe you're a local business and you can only serve people physically. But the fact that you're creating content that's going to live on the internet, it means that it could potentially be viewed by people who are on the other side of the planet from you. And so the way they receive that content would differ depending on their cultural bias. So even if you're not selling your service, creating content to educate, to inspire, to inform the world requires us to have a better understanding of cultural biases. But even within our countries of where we live, we obviously need to be aware that there are nuances that help make people make a decision to purchase something. And the more you can understand what that psychology is, the better your marketing and sales activities are actually going to be. So understanding buyer psychology has a direct impact on your business revenue. It has a direct impact on your brand. And it also has a direct impact on the perception that people have of the value that you bring to the table. So if I'm going to give you an example, just to make buyer psychology as an introduction for today kind of hit home, it would be, one of the things I realize is that different parts of the world respond to different messaging differently. And by that, I mean, we could create a campaign in, say, the US, in North America, that is portraying a certain sentiment, that carries a certain emotion, that is positioned in a certain way for a particular service, and it would do amazingly well. And if we were to take that exact same messaging, that exact same approach, and put it in a country or a culture that is a lot more conservative, think Europe versus the US, Europeans tend to be a lot more conservative. So even if I'm talking about the same problem and I'm actually giving the same solution, it's very important that I understand that my European audience is not going to be as receptive to the same messaging and same approach that my American audience would be receptive to. And the same goes for if we want to come from a European market and enter the African market. Now, Africa is obviously big. If you didn't know this, a lot of my clients and my friends haven't been to Africa. It's a big place. And truly, there are differences depending on which part of Africa you're in. And even country by country, there is a lot of cultural differences. So as an example, if you want to market in East Africa, you're going to need a slightly different approach than if you're going to market to West Africa. Nigeria, which is a really big market, has a different flair. You know, their values, their beliefs, their point of views, the way they approach things is very different, and they tend to be a little bit more aggressive than, say, East Africans. And it's important that you keep that in mind if you are a European company attempting to spread your message across Africa. I've seen ads that are American based on YouTube that are showing up, say, when I'm in Italy. And part of that actually gets me is the fact that the person didn't take the time to tweak that message so that it could be more relevant and probably perform better for the Italian culture, because the Italian culture works with very different values and tends to be very conservative compared to even the UK culture, right? So this is like at a macro level, understanding that culture plays a very significant role in how well your campaigns are going to perform, in how well your content marketing strategy is going to perform, especially if you're creating content that you want to be consumed throughout the world. And now if we go into a very micro aspect of this, we can also go deeper and see cultural biases that are more platform specific. So like people on LinkedIn, the same group of people who are on LinkedIn will have different biases and expectations when they're consuming content on LinkedIn versus when they are on TikTok. And you'll find groups of people coming in together from all over the world who have shared interests on TikTok, who have a certain preference and a certain bias to what kind of content they prefer and how they want to consume it. And then the same people, if they were to come into LinkedIn, they would belong to a different set of groups with a different set of other shared interests that are relevant to the platform, and then they would have their own set of expectations. It can get pretty overwhelming, I do agree. But the bottom line, I think for me, is to recognize that as we're playing a global game, especially with content marketing, you really are playing a global game. You want to make sure that you're very clear on your target audience and how wide or narrow that target audience is, whether it's purely local or whether you have a layer that's local and then another layer that's national and then another layer that's international. And every time you add on those layers, make sure you're creating content that is essentially living up to and matching the expectation of that added layer, keeping in mind that at every different level, at every additional layer, there will be certain psychological triggers, certain psychological biases that you want to be aware of. And so if you want your content to perform, in the long run at the highest level, you want to preempt behavior that will help you achieve those content marketing goals. I hope this makes sense. So I know we're going to keep talking about buyer psychology. We're going to dive deeper into this next week when we have a longer content session. But for today, I want to leave you with a question. What's your understanding of buyer psychology, and are you starting to see the impacts that it will have on your marketing and sales activities? Because this is a question that you really have to ask yourself, especially when you start doing digital marketing. It is impossible for you to really succeed at digital marketing, especially content marketing, if you don't take into account your buyer psychology at every level, okay? It has been wonderful having this conversation with you. I'm more than happy to take your questions now. And for you, my friends who are on LinkedIn, I look forward to seeing you on the next live where we'll go even deeper into what biopsychology really is and what are the different aspects that you want to be aware of so that you can start implementing some changes in your current marketing and sales activities. I'm Jeanette. This has been fun. I hope you got something out of this that you can chew on, and I look forward to the next one. Ciao for now.